Hey, Sainers. We'll wait for a few to tune in. Comment your thoughts. Let me know how you feel about that game. 2 in a row, 2 wins at the MCG, and 2 points out of the 8. So that's kind of the big thing to focus on. I know a lot of people are going to be upset about the last 30 minutes, and I'll be one of them. Percentage would have been nice. 43 points, I think, at three-quarter time, and we packed the bags, hopped on the team bus and went home back to Moorabbin and hopped in our cars and then went back to our homes and had dinner and watched the last quarter on TV without actually turning up. That's pretty much what happened. But I thought it was an interesting point that Dermot Brereton, and I don't usually agree with him, but watching the telecast on Fox Footy, I watched it with the fam. My dad's Collingwood, but he loves the Saints, so I decided to skip going to the game and watch it with the family because I haven't seen them in a while, so that was good fun. But I was watching that, and Dermot basically said that at the moment, yeah, mate, as I explained, I'm watching it with my family, if that's okay with you. But he explained that percentage is so far from ever being regained that we're really, if we're going to make finals, it's really going to be on just wins and not percentage. Right now, our percentage is 84. When we were, I think, 5 or 6 goals up, it was, I think, 85. So if we had have piled on more, it might have gone to 86, 87 if we're lucky. But that still puts us 5 or 6% behind everyone else around that part of the ladder. And the best way for us to get into the finals isn't by percentage. It's by beating the teams around us and beating a few teams above us. And that's really what he said. And I didn't really think about it that way. I was really upset as well with you guys in the last quarter and really wanted us to put the foot to the floor and really beat them by 10, 11 goals, because ultimately that's, to me, where we were in the first 3 quarters. We were so far ahead of Collingwood. The margin was very flattering even at three-quarter time, because that second quarter and a lot of that first quarter we dominated possession, dominated inside 50s. We had the perfect defensive wall with Highmore intercepting when he needed to, Dougal Howard doing a great job, and obviously Cal Wilkie just doing what Cal Wilkie does, which is just time his intercept marks perfectly without giving away any sort of silly push in the back free kicks. So across the ground, we were as comfortable as we've been all year. You know, our tools were doing well, Paddy in the ruck, Marshall forward, King kicking a few, Membry kicking a few, our mids doing what they do, getting clearances. We dominated clearances for the first 3 quarters. Dunstan had, I think, 28 again. Steele just doing what Steele does and had 14 tackles along with, I think, 36 disposals or something crazy, and was by far the best player on the ground again. And Brad Crouch, 28 disposals, I think 10 tackles on top of that. Midfield just did what the midfield needed to do. But the last quarter, they went to sleep. The commentators were giving a lot of credit to Collingwood, but any sane person would see that we just put the cue in the rack, we knew the game was done, and whether that was just because we know deep down percentage isn't going to be the reason we make finals and we wanted to just be happy with the result and that's it, which is not a great way to look at it, or we know we're playing Brisbane next week, we don't know where, we know Brisbane are one of the best team, if not the most informed team in the competition right now, whether we had one eye on that game and thought we're not going to bust our guts with the chance of gaining another 2 or 3 goals at the risk of maybe, accumulating some silly injuries when we don't need to, and just kind of being like, well, game's done, we'll chip it around, and when we chip it around, that's when we concede. Chipping it around usually means killing the game, not conceding, not giving the opposition a look in, not giving them the ball. When it comes to St Kilda chipping it around, it means we stuff up a few silly kicks and we open up the corridor and they end up getting shot after shot after shot on goal. When we are defending at our best, ironically, it's when we're attacking. And that was what we did in the first 3 quarters. We attacked. We had wave and wave and wave of football. They couldn't get their hands onto it in the first 10 minutes. And that was a lot to do with our defensive structure. And when you look at it, in the last 2 weeks, up until three-quarter time, we had conceded 4 goals, I think. In basically nearly 2 games of football, which is unheard of. That's great defensive a great defensive stat. And previous to that, in the previous 3 or 4 games in the first halves, we'd conceded maybe 4 or 5 goals, and that was it. So defensively in our first half, we've been better than anyone in the last 5 weeks. Second half, last week we didn't let Richmond get into it at all. This week, I genuinely think we knew we had the game won. We probably didn't want or didn't expect them to kick 6 goals in the last and for us to kick 2 points and for them to get within 9 points. But I genuinely think we just stopped and we wanted to kill the game and practice chipping it around, but it just didn't work. It just gave Collingwood the upper hand. And, it gave me, I don't know about you guys, but it gave me flashbacks of the Adelaide last quarter where we could have just taken the game on and really won it that way. But instead we reverted to chipping it around, playing defensively, and what that did was just invite pressure and a lot of inside 50s. And that statistically in the last quarter, the Adelaide game and this game, they probably would have been very similar. And I don't think we kicked a goal in the last quarter in the Adelaide game, and we didn't kick a goal in the last quarter in this game. So that was the only disappointment. The positive stuff you can look at all day. 3 quarters of very solid football. That third quarter was some of the best football we've played all season. We kicked 6 goals to 2. We opened up a 49-point lead. It didn't stay that way, obviously, but the fact that football was there was fantastic. Brad Hill had 30 disposals, which was his best performance all year. His first quarter and generally his first half in particular was very, very good. He was even laying tackles and, just doing stuff that we've all been a bit critical of him this year, but that was the perfect game from Brad Hill. Ryan Burns, if he doesn't get a NAB Rising Star nomination this week, the AFL's stuffed. Because his first half, but in general, his first game, his whole game was fantastic. He had over 20 disposals. He got through a lot of tackles and a lot of congested areas that I just didn't think he was capable of. But he's got this burst and he's clearly got a lot of core strength. He doesn't look like the biggest guy, similar to, I guess, I'm not likening him to Chris Judd, but in terms of physique, he's not a big bloke, but you can't tackle him, and he's got some good core strength around his hips, and that's a very good trait for such a young player. Connolly did some nice things. It was great to see Marshall and particularly Ryder. Ryder had a massive third quarter and kicked 2 goals and instrumental in the middle. That tap work to Jack Steele, to Brad Crouch, one-on-one with Grundy, and just the tap backwards, the knowledge to know that, and for Crouch to trust that that's what Ryder was going to do, and for him to execute it was sublime. And that was the reason why we were up so far in that game, was the midfield dominance, and it was a very similar reason as to why we smashed Richmond last week. And our midfield, despite missing Zach Jones and Gresham and Hanbury, has done a great job. Dunstan has come in and done a great job, and it was good to see Butler kick a goal, King to find some form and really start to get some momentum into his season, and Membry to kick a couple of goals as well. I guess the one other player that probably had a bit of a down game would have been Jack Billings, and whether his injury from last week was still with him and he kind of fought through it, I don't know. Whether we should have even brought him in if he was underdone is another question, and maybe give Battle a go. And I feel like we could have exploited them even more if we had played with Battle and had that height advantage. But clearly the coaches thought we were tall enough as it is, and in the end it was one of the reasons why we won. Membry kicks 2, King kicks 2, Ryder kicks 2, Marshall kicks 1. That's 7 goals between them out of our, I don't know how many we kicked, 10 I think, so 7 out of our 10 from our tools. Mackenzie, workmanlike performance again. Ben Long had some good moments, and I thought he was probably hard done by with the umpires, but it was good to see Mackenzie, the Longs and Dunstans and these sort of guys that haven't had a go this year, that have come in the recent weeks, continue their form. But I know a lot of the comments are going to be about the last quarter, but you can't discount in the first 3 quarters when we were on and when we played Saints footy. The last quarter, packed our bags, thought the job was done. Like I said before, we probably, wanted to kill the game, but we didn't expect them to pile on 6 goals to 0, and that made the scoreboard look a lot worse than probably what it is. It's still only a game, less than a game outside the 8, and in the end, like Dermot said, no, I really do agree with him, we're going to get into the 8 if we win enough games, not by percentage. So we've got Brisbane, whether that's, it's going to be a big reason as to how we win next week, whether it's in Brisbane or in Melbourne. Christina, I know you said terrible last quarter, but you don't need to say it a couple of times. We all get it. It was a bad last quarter, but there was a lot to like about the game. And as Dermot said, winning every week is going to get us into the 8, not winning by a lot. Our percentage is gone. We've fucked it with all those thrashings in the early part of the year. We're not going to get it to 100. We're not going to play any team. When you think about it, our draw is that hard. You'd have to win games by a lot. And these are against good teams. We're not going to do what Sydney did to West Coast next week. If we do, mate, that's going to be unbelievable. But what we need to do is just win. That's it. Win every game by a point. Results go our way, and that's it. We play West Coast, who, after today, are kind of around us on the ladder. They're only a winning percentage ahead of us. Sydney, same thing. Port Adelaide, we play in a couple of weeks, and that's in Melbourne, and they're not the same in Melbourne. West Coast got done by 100 today. We're still yet to play Carlton. We play Fremantle. So there's some winnable games coming up. So we just need to keep this momentum going and hope that the boys get hungrier and hungrier the closer they get to that finals position. And now it's within reach. 2 weeks ago it wasn't even close, but suddenly it's less than a win away from us. So it just goes back to the Adelaide loss, the Sydney loss, the Geelong loss. That's 3 games we should have won. We should be entrenched in the 8 right now, and that's crazy to think considering the injuries, the poor form we've had, just the general negativity around the club. To think we should be a top 8 or a top 7 team right now with all of that going on, and with Gresham missing, Patton missing, Hanbury out, Jones out, Marshall Ryder out and in and out of the team, Membry and Seb Ross missing games for family reasons, all that controversy. To think that we should still be a top 8 if those results go our way, I think is a good sign. But today was a good win. Last quarter disappointing. Last week was great. So out of the last 8 quarters of football, we've played 7 very good quarters. So we can't really be too upset about that, considering how poor we were earlier in the year. So a bit of perspective there would be good. I know we wanted us to put the foot to the floor and thump them, and there'd be no better team to thump than Collingwood, I'll tell you that. But just to get the win is important, and for our boys to realise that finals is a genuine possibility now. So that's my 2 cents. I know it was a bit of a rant, but I just know that there was so many disappointed people coming on here about the last quarter. But I just want to remind you, the first 3 quarters was great football. Watch that third quarter over and over, and you'll really see the real St Kilda and a St Kilda team that wanted to win and knew that we were on top and wanted to put the foot to the floor, so to speak. So I'll leave it there. I'll scroll up to the comments. Just give me a sec and we'll get through some of these comments. I might not go through, if there's too many about the last quarter, there's no point, but we'll see how we go. Campbell, not convincing in the end. Yep, fair call, not convinced in the last quarter, but be convinced by the first 3 quarters and the last 4 quarters, the full game against Richmond. Be convinced there. 7 of 8 quarters, we've played better football than the opposition. That's a lot more than we could have said 5-6 weeks ago before the bye. Never in doubt, Jakey. That's from Jack, the Bullet Bytel. Mate, you should have been playing today if you weren't concussed. It probably wasn't. I genuinely think that we weren't in a position where we were going to lose that game. All things would have had to have gone right for Collingwood in the last 2 minutes, and they didn't. But it's funny how, we basically tried for 2 minutes in that last quarter, and that was in the last 2 minutes of the game. And what happens? We get a clearance, and we get a Billings mark in the pocket and a shot on goal to kill the game. And Milks 30 seconds, game's over. He didn't kick the goal, but that showed, the difference between us just taking the piss and us trying. And we took the piss for 28 minutes of that 4th term. For 2 minutes we tried. It was right at a crouch, and then we got it inside 50 and we got a shot on goal, and it was easy done. We didn't kick the goal, but that just showed the difference between us being switched on and being switched off. So there was definitely, it wouldn't have been a discussion at 3/4 time to switch off. Coach Rats isn't going to say, hey boys, take it easy, we've got Brisbane next week. He's not going to say that, but it just takes 1 or 2 players to do that and let Collingwood get a few easy marks, and that kind of spreads to the whole team. But the second we turn it on for 2 minutes in that 4th, we get a clearance, players start running, start tackling, it's a whole different story. So that's so important that it's, that 5 or 6 players stand up when the team needs to stand up. And you could see, I think it was when De Goey or someone took an easy mark in the 4th term, Cal Wilkie just took his mouth guard out, and you could lip read, and I'll say it here, there's a swear word in there, so, for people that don't like that, just look away and not listen. But he said, "What the fuck are we doing?" You could see it in the last 10 minutes. He just took the mouth guard out and said, "What the fuck are we doing?" Which I loved. Sadly, we didn't really fix it from that point on, but he was aware that something was wrong, that we were down. And that's something we've been upset about as fans, is where's the leadership? Where are the players saying what's going on? He did. Even Brad Hill said something, I think, to Jack Steele. A lot of players that aren't captains stood up and said, "Well, what's going on, boys?" It was disappointing that we didn't really lift and we let Collingwood get back into the game at that point. But it's a step in the right direction that players acknowledged it. Weeks gone by, no one says anything, there's no pointing, there's no one saying that's a problem. We all just let it kind of go by, and then we talk at the end of the game when the result's far gone. We did it during the game, and that was good, but we just don't want to get to that point next week. We can't afford to drop off against Brisbane. They are a ruthless team, and they are thumping some good teams that they've been playing. And if it's at the Gabba, that's a fortress for them. If it's here, it makes things interesting, but it's got to be a full quarter performance next week. So we need to look at the last, 7 of our 8 quarters. We need to look at them more so than the last quarter today. Luke says, good performance, but fitness is still an issue. Huge focus for the offseason. I agree. It's a mental thing, but could well be a physical thing too. We did play a taxing game in the first 3 quarters to spread, to tackle the constant pressure. It broke Collingwood down. We kind of grounded to a halt in the 4th term, and that kind of made Collingwood look better than they are. But I'm sure even Collingwood fans should be aware that, even the commentators were saying, where was this Collingwood for the first 3 terms? And it's easy to say, well, because they weren't under pressure. That's why, guys. That's why, BT. Because Saints turned up in the first 3 quarters. If Saints turn up, Collingwood don't get that space, they don't get easy marks, and they don't get the score. And that wasn't Collingwood turning up in the last. It was us disappearing. That was the difference. Tom's asking, how did you feel in the last 10 minutes? Well, Tom, I felt frustrated. My mum was basically leaving the living room and saying, "Oh, we're going to lose this." I will honestly say I didn't think for a second we were going to lose this. I was just already thinking, great, I'm going to have to post a full-time post on Saints TV and somehow be happy with the win, but also kind of mention, well, the last quarter was shit. Because I know that's going to be the main focus. That's the most recent actions are going to be the most recent memory in everyone's mind, right? We're going to be only really thinking about the last quarter when the final siren goes. We're not going to be thinking about the first 3 quarters. If we had have played a shit first quarter and finished off with the last 3 quarters really well, completely different result full time. It would have been like, great, started slow, but we got our game going, bring on Brisbane. That would have been the difference. But really, that's still 3 or 4 quarters. It's just that it was the last quarter when percentage would have been nice and we didn't get what we wanted, but at the end of the day, it's a results-driven game, and we did get the result. Percentage would have been nice, but, at the end of the day, we beat Richmond by 40. We beat Collingwood by 9 after being 50 points or 49 points up midway through the 3rd. Yeah, I think we just put the cue in the rack and we're comfortable. Simple as that. Raphael says, we need to address our 4th quarter fade-outs. Completely agree. Whether that's a fitness thing or not, it's easier to fix. I think if it's a mental thing, and I'm hoping it's more a mental approach to the 4th term, particularly when the game's done. Adelaide, we probably were guilty of doing that after half-time because we were comfortable. We were 6 goals up. We did it there and we lost. We did it at 3/4 time here, and we probably weren't going to lose, but we got to the point where even winning just didn't feel right. So I think, I guess on the Adelaide game, it's an improvement because we kept going in the 3rd and it was just the last and not the full second half. But next week and, just in general, football-wise, you can't drop off even against the worst teams. We did it to Collingwood, who don't know how to kick goals when they're right in front of them. They genuinely don't know how to kick a goal. They're one of the lowest scoring teams in the comp, and we made them look like one of the best attacking teams in the comp in the last quarter because we got complacent. And that was the only reason why they kicked goals. Lockie says, at home, Jake couldn't get a good park. Funny, mate. But yeah, as I mentioned at the top, haven't seen my parents in a while, and I thought it was a good opportunity, shit day at the footy, just to go and to see them. And my dad, as I mentioned, is a Collingwood fan, so it's kind of a family tradition. We watch that game either at the footy together or, just together as a family. So I thought it was a good chance to miss going to the game. And I know last 2 weeks I haven't been there, but I do dedicate my time 24/7, pretty much 7 days a week, to St Kilda and to Saints TV. So I hope you don't mind, Lockie, if I just take a break for 2 hours just to see the fam and still commit myself to the club in other ways. So hopefully that's okay with you and other people watching as well. Stu says, need to develop our killer instinct. Still satisfied with winning and not putting the foot on the throat. Good call there, Stu. I think we do need to know when the game is there to take, and we need to identify when the opposition's done. When the opposition's waving the white flag and saying, we give up, that's when we say, okay, let's keep going. Not, oh, well, we're done. Good job, boys. Let's just kind of kill the game in the last and be happy with our work, Brisbane, next week we play them. They're the best at it, I think, in the comp. When they see that their opponent's down, they thump them. And the Bulldogs are another team. The second they sniff out that their opposition's not on, they don't think, oh, we'll take it easy because the opposition's not switched on. They think, oh, all right, let's get a 10, 15 goal win. And they did that against us. They did that against North earlier in the year. They did that against West Coast in Perth last week. That's what the best teams do. They kill the opposition when they're down. They don't give them sympathy. They really do just put the foot to the throat and choke them out. And we need to do that more. Michael's disappointed with the last quarter. Christopher says, happy with Mason Wood slowly improving his game. Yep, I don't think he troubled the scoreboard today. I'm trying to think if he did. No, I think he had a few snaps, but he didn't get a goal. But overall, I mean, his contested footy in the air was really surprising. I know he's a big boy, but there were some big packs there, and he got hands to it first. He didn't clunk them, but he brought the ball to ground, and he's great below his feet as well. So he's great at just creating a contest. If the Collingwood player looks like he's in a favoured position to take a mark, Wood just finds a way to just get back and just put his arms up, and he's not going to take the mark, but he brings the ball to ground, brings the Butlers, the Higgins, these sort of guys, and Ben Long in particular into the game, and it creates scoring opportunities from there. And last week, I think he was number one for generating goal assists. I think he directly assisted 3 or 4 of our goals, more than anyone on the ground. And today, I think he probably set up a few goals and score involvements as well. So Mason Wood's, he's not setting the house on fire, so to speak, but he's doing enough. He's doing enough to keep his position and to keep his opponent accountable. And he's good for the odd goal. And I think that's probably why someone like Josh Battle was favoured as the medical sub and not someone like Mason Wood. And the difference would be Mason Wood's hitting the scoreboard more than Battle, but obviously Wood is playing closer to goal, so he's got the advantage there. James says 4 of 7 games are going to be tough. We need to be able to play 4 quarters. Yep, I think that's a non-negotiable for really any game of footy. Even when you're playing the shittest team in the comp, you want to play 4 quarters of footy. So that kind of goes without saying. It starts next week. We did it last week. We did it for 3 or 4 quarters this week. But next week it's going to be a big test. And last year we did give Brisbane a run for their money. Our pressure football was good, and it was only a few misses late that really cost us. And hopefully this week, we know with the season on the line pretty much every week now, moving to the last 8 weeks of the year, that if we get a win against Brisbane, it opens up. So fingers crossed the boys get that confidence back. They look at the first 3 quarters and really take confidence of how well they played there. And maybe even we get Zach Jones, and that adds to that midfield strength and that speed, because I think that's probably the only thing that we're missing at the moment is that explosive speed out of the middle. We're missing Hunter Clark with that kind of that silk, and he's not quick, but he slows the game down and it makes it look quick. But to get Zach Jones back before the Brisbane game would be huge for us. So fingers crossed he gets in. Mitchell, Jimmy Webster zigging and zagging, you ripper. Yeah, Jimmy was fantastic on Jamie Elliott. Jamie Elliott's a gun small forward, mate. He's the main reason why Collingwood got back into the game, and he was the only guy looking like kicking goals for them early in the game. I think he kicked their first goal or 2 goals. But Jimmy Webster after that was just phenomenal, one-on-one, and even just that part at the end where he just faked it, broke the guy's ankles and hit up a player. He's getting better every week, Jimmy. So, to be honest, I thought with his injuries he was probably done, leading into this year with Ben Patton taking that sort of back pocket position. But Patton goes down, Jimmy gets back into the lineup, and he hasn't looked back, and he's been one of the best performers in the back half with Cal Wilkie and Tom Highmore. So I think overall that back half is looking really steady. It was mainly the midfield pressure that dropped off in that fourth, and that's why they got so many scoreboard opportunities. And our defence in the last 5 weeks, I think, conceded the least amount of goals in the comp. So I know we've only won 2 of those 5 games when we've defended really well, but it's the foundation there. So we defend well and then we move forward. So we're getting that part of the game right. It's all about kind of keeping that midfield pressure and taking our chances when we're on top. And I think we did that in that third term. We took our chances when we were on top. Sam says, saw Spook and Hilly taking talking at 3/4 time, having a laugh. Pretty sure we knew the game was won and stopped. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did, to be honest. This one's from Kenny. Robert Harvey phoned Ratton and asked for a few last quarter junk time goals just to make him look good. Yeah, it was interesting just seeing Robert Harvey when they were getting done by 50, just sitting there, just, like that. Whether he's just like, oh, well, I'm not going to coach next year. I know that Collingwood's reviewing that, and whether he's going to be the full-time coach or not, who knows? But he could well, if he's not at Collingwood next year, he could well be at the Saints, and I'd happily take him. So good to see Harves getting a chance, but also good to get the win over him too. So that was nice. Zach says, good 3/4, but last quarter was shocking. Pete says, let me just extend that. It's a long comment. Pete says, Billings showed today why bringing in players just because of their name is a bad idea. He had a shocker. I hope Battle doesn't leave at the end of the year. Yep, it's going to be interesting to see what we do if Zach Jones comes in next week, whether someone like a Connolly comes out. But I actually genuinely think Connolly's got something. He's got some X factor and he's got some toe. He's quick off the mark, and I think with him and Jones coming back in and Hill, that adds some good leg speed with Sinclair as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jones does return, who do you bring in? There's not really many droppable after 2 wins in a row. Billings could be on the chopping block. I think it'd be very hard done by to drop someone like Burns or Connolly after their performances. Duncan says, good win Saints, but we need the killer instinct though. Jake, good show, mate. Thanks, Duncan. And that's exactly right. We do need that killer instinct. So hopefully we start developing it with a few wins in the next 4 or 5 weeks. Bo says, you could tell less than a minute into the last quarter that we weren't going to try and score. Exactly what we did in last year's final against the Dogs. Let them back in, keep the bloody foot down and bury them. Hope Rats spray them after that crap in the first quarter. Oh, the last quarter, sorry. Yeah, that's a fair point, but also you've got to be careful, because if Rats gets into the rooms and he's like, fuck boys, what the hell was that in the last quarter? It can create a different sort of feeling in the rooms, because we've won the game. We played 3 very good quarters prior to that. So I think the first thing he needs to do is acknowledge, great first 3 quarters, boys, set up the win. That was great football, particularly that third term. Paddy, you set the example. Steely, great performance. But boys, disappointing last quarter. That's how I think he needs to come across. I know some people will want him to take the angry pills and get really pissed off, but I think when you've played 75% of the game at a really good level, you need to acknowledge that. I think it would send the wrong example if he goes into the rooms and really focuses on the bad things as opposed to good things first. And that was one reason and one point to come from the home truths and the conversations they've had in the bye, was that they wanted to focus more on what players could do and the positives of their game, and that's really set us up for the 2 wins in the last 2 weeks following the bye. So it'd be going against that to suddenly focus on what we didn't do as opposed to what we did do. So I think he's probably going to focus more on the first 3 quarters and not so much the last. But it's good to acknowledge it. I wouldn't focus on it, but you've got to acknowledge it and say, hey, we can't have that next week. We can't have that. Ryan Burns, a shout for Rising Star. That's from Buster. Yeah, mate, I really hope he gets it. He probably deserved it last week or the week before. He's had some massive numbers, game high marks and tackles and these sort of things. And I think today he finished with over 20. So he's being a really consistent performer, and he's that connector. And he's in every contest. He's got... they don't really talk about it, but he must have really good endurance because he does not stop running. So I'd be curious to see what percentage of time on ground he spent. But he seemed like he was on the ground for a lot of the time, and he always had a bit of zip about him. You don't see him just like a lot of the other players in the full term. He doesn't just sit there and, the game's done, I'm just going to jog. He's always zipping and zagging and handballing and going for the 1-2s. He's always trying to make something happen. And it does remind me of a Jack Steven. You rarely used to see in Jack Stevens' best years, in 15 to 17, he'd get the ball and he'd kick it and he'd run. He'd be the one player getting the 1-2s when everyone else is gassed. That's what Ryan Burns reminds me of, and that's a great trait. What else we got? Rusty says, beat Tigers, beat Magpies, happy enough. That's good enough. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, if you had told me after the bye we're going to smash... we're going to beat Richmond and Collingwood by a combined total of 50 points. That's an average of 25 points per game. I'd be like, yeah, I'm happy. If it was 40 Richmond, 9 Collingwood, you'd be like, yeah, I'll take that. You genuinely would. If you, before the bye, after the Adelaide game, said, we're going to beat Richmond by 40 and we're going to beat the Pies, we're going to be up by 50, but we're only going to win by 10, you'd be like, yeah, all right, I'll take it. You probably would, honestly. We're pretty fickle because we want the best every week and we want to smash teams every week. And we know that percentage is such a focus, but I think you put into perspective, our percentage is 84. We're probably not going to get it high enough to compete against the teams above us because a lot of them are closer to the 100 mark. With the draw that we have too, we're not going to smash Brisbane's. We're not going to smash the Ports. We just need to beat them. And whether that's by a point or 10 points, I don't even give a shit. Just beat them, and that will take care of the ladder itself. The percentage would be nice. It's a nice to have, but at the end of the day, it's the 4 points that is the priority, and that's what we've done in the last 2 weeks. So be happy with that, Sanus. Be happy with the 4 points. Butler needs a run at Sandringham. That's from Julie. Yeah, I don't know. He kicked a goal. I thought he did some nice things. He broke through some tackles. He laid some big tackles. But yeah, I mean, we want him to be the Butler from last year, but so far he hasn't quite replicated that. But I thought he did some nice things, and Dean Kent's had some good games in the second, so I don't know if that's a chance to bring him in. But you've got Long creating the contest in the forward half. Butler kicked a goal. Higgins competed without kicking. He kicked a goal in the first quarter. So they all they've all done their part. I probably don't see him being dropped, but he's on the edge. One more bad performance and he'd be on the edge, but I think he did enough today. Yeah, Michelle says, I'd rather be here talking about the win rather than a loss. Yeah, fair call. I mean, we can be very tough on the club at times, and that's only because we want the best and we're very passionate, and I completely get that. But, it's just similar to the North game. We were up by 40, we won by 20, and we're a bit upset. And I was probably too, negatively focused on that sort of stuff. And I think today it was just more of a focus on, we got the job done. We got the 4 points. We move on. There are bigger fish to fry at the end of the day, and it starts next week, and that's where our focus probably went in the fourth term. Brisbane were there watching us. I hope that the game is in Melbourne and at the G, because I think we play the G really well, and Brad Hill seemed to love the space there. So hopefully the game's moved there, and that creates a bit of consistency. 2 games at the G, 2 wins in a row. That'd be good for us. Brisbane haven't played there, I don't think, all year. So that'd be kind of a mental edge to get on Brisbane as opposed to flying to the Gabba and playing in front of their home fans. Look, guys, I might leave it there. I'll go a couple more and then we'll wrap it up. This one's from Scotty. Very happy for 2 wins in a row. Still not working. on a four-quarter effort can pick this game apart, but let's leave it at that and tick 2 wins, and we are improving. Focus on Brisbane and try get another win. We've got Brisbane, Port, West Coast. Brisbane, probably the toughest game for the rest of the season. Then we've got Port, and that's supposed to be in Melbourne. They're a different team away from home. I'm tipping us we can get them there. If it's at Marvel, that makes it a 50-50 game. And West Coast, it's supposed to be in Perth, but hopefully it's moved because we've seen West Coast the last 2 weeks. They've lost by 10 goals and they've lost by 15, 16 goals to Bulldogs in Sydney. So they're there to be got at if we play them in Melbourne. And then after that, I think it's Carlton and Fremantle, I think, at the end of the season. So a few tricky games there. But yeah, and I think we do play Sydney again. So the draw doesn't get any easier for us. But if we want to make finals, you have to beat the good teams. So I really hope that we relish in this opportunity to play the best teams. And for some reason, I have a weird feeling that we excel playing tough teams and we struggle and we get complacent against the teams that we should smash. North should have smashed, we beat by 20. Collingwood should have smashed, we win by 9 after being 50 up. Adelaide, 6 goals up, put the cue in the rack at halftime, we blow the lead and we lose the game. So when you look at it like that, Geelong, competitive, should have won. Richmond, we should have beaten them. West Coast, down at halftime by 5 goals. We beat them by 5 goals. GWS away, and they're looking good. We win. Gold Coast away, they're looking good and beating Richmond. We beat them. So there's a few games there that were tough, but we won. And those are teams that are in form at the moment. So I think our form's getting there. I would be a bit more positive if we had followed through with a big win today, but it's 2 wins in a row nonetheless. So I'll leave it on that, guys. Don't be disheartened by that last term. I know it's upsetting, and percentage would have been good, and it would have been good to text your Collingwood mates and say, haha, fuck you, Collingwood is shit, we beat you by 10 goals. But really, the game was done at 3/4 time. We were comfortable. We have tougher opponents to focus on in the future, and hopefully that's where we bring that 4/4 effort that we would have liked today. So until then, guys, I'll catch you on Tuesday night. Podcast will be out. Me, Marshy, Joycey back in the studio. So make sure to submit your Jakey's junk mail on Monday night. We'll answer those questions on the podcast. This review will also be up on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed to the Saints TV YouTube channel, / Saints TV official, hit it up there. Help us get to 2,000 subscribers. That would be awesome. And obviously Instagram at Saints TV official as well. So I'll be back to preview the Brisbane game on Thursday night when the teams are out. So that'll be good. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Focus on the first 3 quarters and that we're only 2 points. Only a draw is the difference between us and GWS, who are outside the 8. That is it. Our season is alive, and it's good to still be relevant, isn't it? If we had have lost the last 2 weeks, the season would be done. We'd be sitting in 15th thinking, well, season's done, why do we care? But we've got reason to care. The club is fighting. They're giving us a reason to get up and watch the footy, go to the games and be excited. And there's nothing more exciting than taking on one of the top teams next week with a chance to get back into the 8 and to really to get some form. And that's what I'm excited about. So hopefully you guys are too. But until next Thursday, take care of yourselves. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the win. And go you mighty Saints. See you, Saints.